Okay, everybody. So, hello, everybody. My name is Dan Dimitar, and I'm gonna talk about a joint project which I did with Mr. Costin Raiu. We're gonna talk about some IoT devices that have been infected, and this research has been running for almost two years now. So, a little bit of intro about who I am. I graduated in 2014, and right after I joined the global security, and there's like some feedback a bit here, so I think it's okay. Can anybody hear me okay? Oh, okay, okay. So I joined the global research and analysis team, and since then I like to do a lot of stuff. Mostly I'm a master procrastinator, and sometimes you can find me like in these weird places like coding stuff, so that's not unusual. So what I'm interested in like large DDoS attacks, and then the trend started since 2013 and 2014, and then since then I was like actually wondering like, hey, okay, what can we do? Let's see what happens, and then what's the threat landscape. I'm also interested in how much money do they actually make by running these botnets and infecting routers and everything. I like to break things, so I like to break code, stuff, hack some IoT devices, hack some electrical devices, not like my friend Sergey and Igosha, but like at a smaller scale. And also, whenever I can, I like hanging out with Jacobi. He's a really nice, cool guy. So, what is the problem? The problem is that more and more devices are vulnerable and are being exploited. We've seen like this trend, and actually, one must ask itself: is this like actually a new trend or not? Anybody heard of, or anybody knows what software is called the Great Worm? Any? Okay. Huh? Yeah? Can you shout? No? Code? Almost there. Not so much. It's so you're close. The Great Worm was nicknamed the Morris worm. The Morris worm happened in 1988 when a guy said like, okay, let's try to write a small piece of software to try to infect computers. And he did. He exploited the vulnerability, and then he was hopping from one computer to another. And then it actually successfully infected, like, they say 10,000 devices. His flaw was that his worm was infecting the same computer multiple times. And then system administrators noticed, and then they people started panicking. He was charged with like some, I don't know, he had trial, and then people started disinfecting those computers. But the thing is, like, they didn't have a proper way, and the antiviruses were not like they are now. So they didn't have a proper way to disinfect the computers. So they had to like separate them into clusters, and then each cluster they had to manually reinstall, disinfect, or delete the files. But then if you connected two clusters together, one disinfected and the other one still infected, they would infect each other at the same time. So the question remains, like, is there a difference to what happened then to what happens now? It was 1988. It was the boom of computers. Like more and more computers were being connected to the ARPANET network, which is like the father of the internet. More and more devices were being added to the network, and then they got infected. And then they had no protections, they had no patches, they just got like blam, bam, blasted. So there's this like trend of internet devices, and then Business Insider says that like by 2020 there will be like more than 30 million devices. Well, smarter guys than me yesterday, they said something like, oops, thank you. So Peter and Eric, they said something like 50 billion devices by 2020. Well, I think that they're smart people, so I'm gonna go by their number. So by 2020, there will be like 50 billion devices. So this is like, a nice trend. But then we have to think about like, what are the attacks against these devices? And if we actually look at this, at the trend, we see that like there was DDoS attack on BBC, DDoS attack on US College, DDoS attack on Akamai, DDoS attack on OVH, which was a staggering 1.1 terabytes per second. It's like do you imagine, like, it was huge. DDoS attack on the Krebs on security guy website. He was knocked down, he was refused by Akamai. They said, like, we can't protect you anymore, you have to go somewhere else. Luckily, Google said, okay, we're gonna take you in, so they protected him. And then there's DIN DNS. The DIN DNS attack was like pretty interesting. I didn't find like an actual number of like what was the magnitude of the attack, but the actual fact is that it affected our lives. It affected GitHub, which I use it daily. It affected Twitter. It affected I think Skype, and all other providers that are actually using the DIN DNS provider. So these attacks are real, and these attacks are affecting our life. So today we're going to talk about, like, how does one mount an attack? What are they looking for? What are the means of attacking these devices? And how can we protect these ones? How can we protect against these ones? I actually would like if somebody can bring my backpack from there, because I forgot to bring something. There's my backpack over next to. So yeah, I forgot to bring it. But basically, we're going to discuss about their like, what motivates the attackers to do this stuff, and what happens with these devices once they get infected. So meet the Hug. The Hug is a nice IP camera. It is used by produced by a Chinese manufacturer, and this nice camera has a default password. Can anyone guess what's the default password for this camera? Nice try, but it's not. 345, close. So default password is this one. I would say, like, it calls for evil. I don't know. They just randomly thought that this is a good password. Of course, it's default, and they can't do anything. Like, you can change it, but then the attackers found it as well. So basically, this is Bob. Let's discuss about another friend. Let's call it Bob. This is Bob. So what does Bob do? Bob is a Zyxel router. Zyxel-based router. It's produced by TP-Link, and it's like your average wireless ADSL modem router. It's not so powerful. It's like 54 megabytes per second, so like, you can't do much with it, but it works. It is shipped. Apparently, it's shipped in most of the countries, in Poland, in Asia, in the Middle East. But it has an interesting feature. This router has the ROM's page server vulnerability. So the page server vulnerability means that you can change its password, you can change it to whatever you want, but then the attacker can find it back. They can just fetch the place where the firmware is being allowed to. The place from where you can download the firmware. It's not password protected. It's open. You just go like to /rom0. You fetch the firmware, you decode it, and you get the password. And we did this one on this one. It's actually a well-known flaw. And yeah, people are like, what can you do? Nothing we can do. Well, so these are some examples of bad practices. And these are some examples of attackers exploiting our friend Ahug, our friend Bob, and they are trying to get the means of like what to do. The statistics say that there are like 170 million devices vulnerable. Well, I actually am not sure if this is true. I think that it's kind of more. I think it would be like 500,000 or something. My friend Fabio in 2014 wrote a blog post saying that in Brazil, one large ISP shipped this like millions of ADSL routers, 4.5 million, and then those routers were vulnerable. So what did the bad guys do? They went into them, and then they hijacked them, they infected them, and then they were like harving user credentials. They were like not only like the normal user credentials, but they were like trying to get the bank account details. They were trying to hijack your bank account login, and then they would like extract money from it. So more details, you can find it in his blog post. Mark Mark also yesterday said like the IoT devices and the IoT attacks are the future. Well, I would say the IoT attacks are now. The future is like way closer than we think. And let's see like how can we protect against this? How can we protect against this stuff? So basically our research consists of like running honeypots. Well, you know, everybody runs honeypots, so you might say like then this is like pretty standard approach, like it's not like revolutionary. But we noticed something. We noticed that whenever we were like trying to see if we get hits, we were seeing low amounts of hits from the honeypots we deployed on VPSs. Like you go to a VH, you rent a VPS, and then you get like, we didn't get a lot of hits. And then we were thinking like, hey, this is maybe the attackers actually mapped the networks because they're public. And then who runs an ADSL router on OVH? Like there's no broadband router. So our idea was to actually run honeypots in people's houses. And then of course you can't run a honeypot. Like you can't put a computer in a person's bag. So we were running Raspberry Pis, and then with the Raspberry Pi, you just go to a friend. Some of my friends accepted, some of my friends didn't, and then you just plug it in, and then it works. It doesn't affect his internet like browsing. Doesn't affect anything. It just silently records any hits in that residential networks. So those are the residential networks you can see on the screen. Mainly are in Romania. Some of them are in UK. We're also running some of them in other European countries. But basically, we got up until now we got like around 100 or 200 IP addresses. I think this number is like greater now. And then we got like almost 30 million hits in our honeypots. So I would like to talk about some of the patterns in our hits. And basically we saw like brute force attacks, but this is so 2011. It's like, it's like low return on investment. You take a lot of time to brute force the password. The routers are slow, so it doesn't care. So basically then the ROM pager exploit came, and then the shell shock came. And then there's like, I would like to, in the end, to talk about the Apache Strat exploit, which is like, it's a relatively new one. So basically, what happens? The ROM pager exploit, they can't run a shell on the device. Although this device, Bob, they can't run a shell on it, but they can change settings. Although Bob has telnet, they can't. It's not like a shell telnet. It's just a management console. We just go like click 1 to go to settings, click 2 to go to this stuff. So they can't do much. They change settings. They change the DNS servers. In the shell shock, they try to execute commands. Same for Apache. So what happened with the ROM pager exploit? Basically, this is like an old vulnerability. I won't go in depth with it. But then we saw what the DNS servers they were checking for. And then we actually imitated a real client using those DNS servers. So we said, okay, this is us at home. We have our DNS servers changed. Let's see what we see. So mostly we saw clickjacking. Basically, whenever you go on a web page and then there are ads, they were replacing the IP address of the ad server to one of theirs, and then they were like serving you this page. This JavaScript, it runs in the page because it's an actual ad, and then it redirects you to some pages. And then like it was like pretty interesting to see, like, I don't know, for some reason they want you to get Netflix. And then, I don't know exactly what do they gain if you get Netflix, but apparently they want you to get it. And then some other ads of their own, they were like inviting me to invest in a new cryptocurrency called Fargo Coin. Anyone heard of Fargo Coin? I didn't. Apparently it's a new one. I don't know, maybe it's the new Bitcoin, but yeah. And then this is like the classic browser extension. And they, unfortunately, they noticed that, I know, somebody was checking upon them, and the pages that were supposed to serve you the actual browser extension are not working. There should be like a browser there, but it's not. Then let's check another page. No browser extension. Well, after some digging, we actually got some luck, and then it's pretty interesting because you can see on the page, like this extension that might be like help you I don't know, make your browser better, actually can read all the contents on your web page, and then they can manage your app's extension and everything. So basically, what are they doing? They know that the infection, they know that they can't run a DNS server for longer times, and this is what we've seen. Basically, we got ROM0 exploit in our honeypot, and then we checked the DNS server, and then in 1 month it's gone. They can't keep the DNS servers longer because law enforcement, because other security researchers, so they actually they are being taken down. But then what can you do instead? You can ask the user to install an extension that can change the ads on the fly. But then your DNS servers can vanish. You still have the extension installed in the user's browser, and then you still can make money because you still can change the ads. So this is what they're doing. I didn't go more in depth on this one. Then the classic, you need to update your Flash page, which is like so old, but then I think it works sometimes. This page, the actual sample was missing, so they might have removed it again. Maybe they noticed they were being watched. So we go to another one. This one, actually, I managed to fetch it with like I had to like use Internet Explorer. I had to have like a specific version of Windows, but then I actually managed to get it. I got it, and then it's like not so interesting, but then it's still adware. It's still like they can still make money out of it. They can still infect your computer and then show you some ads, do some stuff, and then basically they make money. Okay, so this is the ROM0 one, the ROM0 text. Those are happening for like 2 or 3 years now, and then it's like not so interesting. Let's talk about the Apache Strat attack. So basically, the Apache Strat was a vulnerability disclosed by Cisco on the 8th of March, and then allows remote code execution in terms of like you can run commands on it, and then basically the first hit in our honeypots last month, it was 1 day later. So it took them 1 day to do it. So let's see what happens. And in total, we got like 10K hits overall this month. So this is how it looks like, a sample of the actual request. And then you can actually see the content type header, which is being exploited. Well, it's like a lot of gibberish stuff, like blah, 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 blah. And then we say like, oh, wait, what? IP table, stop. And then it was like CMD and then some bash, like, interesting. Let's take a further look. So basically what they're doing is that they're trying to stop the firewall. And then fetch some file, and then they're actually detecting if you're on Windows or on Linux version, because Apache Strat is not actually an embedded device. Doesn't run on IoT devices. It runs on actual computers, so it's a server. And then is it a Windows? CMD. Is it a Linux? Run bash. So okay, we said like okay, let's go and see what's on these pages. So the IP address that was serving the exploit was like it's a server in China, and they have like everything in plain sight. They have like this page. You can see like everything. Unfortunately, I can't read Chinese, so like, but I understood like what's happening there. And then there's like the folders were actually visible. They didn't even bother to hide or to make that directory listing inaccessible. But everything is here. So they're trying some samples. They notice the samples are being caught by the AV vendors, by heuristics or by actual detections, and then they add a new one, and they add a new one, and they iterate, basically. But this is interesting. Can anybody remember that we saw the same server, web server listing these files in the yesterday's talk? It was the same version. It's an Apache Tomcat something. You can easily deploy it. You can just run it and then it serves some pages. It's the same one used by the guys. I think it was in the talk about the Romanian gang. So this is interesting. And then one day, my honeypot got like a new file, and then I checked it 1 hour later. And then basically I saw that, oh, this is interesting. The hit was like 1 hour before, and then the sample was uploaded 1 hour before. This is Chinese time, so it wasn't like 6 a.m. in the morning. And then it got 970 hits in 1 hour. So basically, they managed to knock almost 1,000 devices in 1 hour, devices that fetched this sample. Well, 916, because that's one is mine. But yeah, some of them might be researchers, but even that, like if you get like infect like 500 devices in 1 hour, I think that's pretty impressive. Afterwards, they noticed that the sample got detected, so they uploaded some more samples, and then they uploaded some other list of IP addresses. And now, this is where it gets interesting. Those samples are like, meh, not so interesting. We detected some of them, the 361s. It wasn't detected by Kaspersky, but then we added to our collection. So, an interesting feature was that I coded our honeypots to actually react to any wget or curl links. So our honeypots collect the logs, and then the logs are being processed in a machine. And then another machine actually fetches the URL, the links, and then it tries to fetch in a sandbox environment. It actually tries to fetch those samples. So basically, it tries to fetch what you see here, like vget -c blah 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 /6. But then I noticed the attackers started using FTP. Basically, they were echoing these commands in a file, and then were actually running this file. And then I was like, oh my god, like my honeypot doesn't know how to handle these FTP connections. And then I found it like pretty interesting because like they changed their behavior. They adopted a new tactic, mostly because I think they realized that our honeypots are capable of automatically extracting the files. So they used this one, which was, I couldn't manage to fetch the file, setup.exe, because, or get Microsoft.exe, because like the FTP server was already gone by then. Okay, so basically, the trends we've been seeing are that they are trying to attack a lot of networks. They are trying to infect a lot of devices, and as more and more devices are as more and more devices are added to the network, the vulnerability and the web space to attack gets larger and larger. And this is the list of IP addresses. Once an infected IoT device gets successfully exploited, this device fetches the list of IP addresses, and then it tries to hit other IP addresses. And those IP addresses are specified by the attackers. And this is a list of the ASNs they are hitting. And you can see like they're mostly hitting the Southeast Asia. And then it got me wonder, like, why do I see only Southeastern Asia mostly? Like 1 million IP addresses in Korea. Sorry, these are the trends. 1 million IP addresses in China, 2 million in China, 1 million IP addresses in Korea. Like, why? It might be that they are actually probing the entire internet, and in that time frame, like last month, they actually were probing the only Southeastern Asia, or in Southern Eastern Asia, there are like some vulnerable devices that are can still be attacked. So. That I don't know. Maybe I'm just seeing a small part from the big picture, or they know where the devices are. But the fact that I still see ROM0 or ROM pager exploits or attempts in the honeypots in 2017, although there was like a huge fuss, it was like a huge debate, like we need to protect the XyXL routers, we need to stop we need to patch them, all the ISPs have to patch them. The fact that I still see attacks means that there are still vulnerable routers out there. And then I think this trend will actually not go away. Like this is like 40 years old exploit, and I think it's still gonna be here for longer times. So, in conclusions, I would like to say that we have a long way to do, like in order to actually get like to be able to secure our IoT devices. I think new devices that are being built or that are being developed and they're code based should be have a thorough code review or a security review. And then this is a trend I've seen in the yesterday's talks. Everybody was saying that IoT devices, they have to have like their code changed. People have to patch their devices, and people have to, vendors have to patch their devices, and they should stop sending out devices that are not like secure enough. Because the problem is like IPv4 will come soon. Sooner or later will be there. And then in IPv4, potentially each device has its own IP address. And this is devastating. Well, right now, we might be protected, or we might have like a false protection because of the netting that happens in IPv4, and then your device is not directly accessible on the internet. But then what happens if the IoT device has an IPv6 address, and then it's publicly available from all over the world? Well, that's like pretty scary. And then there like the idea, the thing of new exploits. Well, those exploits will still be there. Like in 1 year, in 2 years, there will be new exploits. The question is like, what do we do against them? How do we patch them? And then there's like, I would call it adoption rate of exploits. And you've seen the Apache Strat exploit. They adopted it in 1 day. So basically it was on the 8th, and then on the 9th we saw hits. And then my feeling is that the ARE will get lower. But this is interesting because this is inverse proportional to the discussions we had yesterday about exploits on operating systems. Whereas those ones, like 20 years ago, it took them like 1 day to write the exploit, and then now it takes them like 2 or 3 weeks or even months. But now, with the IoT devices, I think it's the other way around. I think it's even trivial. They have like so many attack vectors they learned from exploiting the operating systems. They have like a huge range of attacks, and the protections that are in the mature operating systems are not in the IoT devices. So I think the time frame to get an exploit is like gets lower and lower. So I would like to thank those people for helping me writing the presentation, and then with everything with the presentation. I would like to thank those people with the research and everything. They helped me with this one. And then in the end, I would like to say that for sure, we need secure IoT devices. We need to find a way to do it. But then the question is, will we be able to actually do it in time? And then what will happen when a new DDoS attack happens? And then will it affect our lives or not? So thank you very much. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the presentation.